All right, let's start. So, hi everyone. My name is Sunil, and I'm joining you from Houston, Texas. I lead one of the business units at Sigmoid as Vice President. I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar on how PepsiCo and Sigmoid are building innovative solutions for resilient supply chain using the power of AI and advanced analytics. So, over the next 40 minutes, we will hear how companies like PepsiCo are driving strategic planning and decision making for optimized supply chain operations. So let's just dive in. So to start things off, let me first introduce our speakers for today. We have with us Douglas Ishikawa, supply chain leader at PepsiCo. Douglas will share how his team is leveraging advanced analytics to transform supply chain operations. We also have Manav Dev Sachdeva, principal analyst at ISG. Manav specializes in emerging technologies such as advanced analytics, AI and Gen AI across diverse industries. So few housekeeping items before we start today. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A section. You will find the Q&A sections towards the bottom right corner. We will do our best to address as many as possible towards the end of the webinar. You will also see a few poll questions pop up during the discussion. We encourage you to take a moment to respond as they help us tailor the conversation to your interest. And last but not the least, a short feedback survey will appear once the session ends. Your inputs are going to be extremely valuable and will help us to improve our future webinars. So now let me just quickly give an introduction on Sigmoid as the host of the webinar. So Sigmoid is a data and AI consulting company that works closely with Fortune 500 companies to help them make the most of their data. We bring deep expertise across cloud, AI, and industry domains, and we focus on solving real business challenges in areas like finance, supply chain, marketing, and ESG. Our teams have delivered impactful solutions across industries like CPG, retail, healthcare, and BFSI, helping businesses move faster, grow smarter, and make AI a core part of how they operate. Now let's turn to our speakers to get their views on some of the important aspects of the challenges we see around the supply chains in the world today. My first question will be for Manav on what he sees from an outside-in perspective. So Manav, as an industry expert, could you please share the top trends and disruptions in supply chain today? Over to you, Manav.
Hi everyone, my name is Manav. I am an analyst at ISG Research, and I want to thank everyone for having me on today's panel. I'm excited to share my perspectives on how global supply chains are evolving and frankly, how they're getting disrupted. As someone who closely tracks these shifts, I can say that we are living through a period in the history of supply chains that's going to be most transformative. Now, let me start by setting some context on the macro shifts we at ISG are observing. And then I will walk you through some of the responses enterprises are giving and where they are struggling. So starting with the 4 key shifts that we are observing in the global supply chains today. Starting with the VUCA environment, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now this is no longer an exceptional disruption anymore. This is a baseline. Whether it's geopolitical risks or wars or more recently tariff disruptions, this is challenging the traditional ways of supply chain planning. The next one we see is, and we call it a zero tolerance zone from a technology perspective. Now enterprises must have AI as a part of their demand forecasting, end-to-end visibility, and enabling sustainable practices. There is just no room for lag anymore. We need supply chains that are fast, visible, and green. Then the third one comes. It's not about the future technologies anymore. Generative AI and agentic AI use cases are already there, and ISG sees that early movers in this space are already reaping benefits from different areas of supply chain. The last one that we see is about execution meeting strategy. And thanks to some of the specialist providers out there who are bringing a combination of domain expertise and AI expertise and converting what enterprises are looking for from their analytics programs. So the message is clear. Disruption is high, but innovation is keeping pace. Now, if we shift our focus on how enterprises are responding, this slide captures it really well. Priority number 1 is about creating connected supply chains. Now, supply chain control towers is a key theme of it. Functional control towers are giving you visibility of specific supply chain areas along with simulation capabilities wherein you can actually measure the impact of your decision even before taking them. Then the priority number 2 is about risk mitigation. Supply chain leaders want better supply risk and cost benefit analysis models, and AI is helping there as well. You are able to map geopolitical risks and other sorts of risk across geographies and supplier sets. Moving on to AI-enabled operations. Now, there is a strong push for AI-enabled operations as well. This includes smarter forecasting, autonomous decision-making, especially in the areas of inventory management and order placement. Now, AI is helping here by bridging gaps across siloed teams, so the outcome is anyway higher. I will end by saying that the fourth priority is the circular supply chains, wherein AI is being used to forecast emissions, waste product lifecycle traceability, and which is enabling enterprises to bake the theme of sustainability within their processes, like manufacturing, logistics, right? So the priorities are also clear. Enterprises are looking for supply chains that are connected, resilient, intelligent, and sustainable. Now, but there is always a but. In this case, also, like all transformative programs, enterprises are running into challenges. The left side is what enterprises are looking to attain, while the right side clearly summarizes the roadblocks that they are constantly hitting into. I'm going to focus on the right side about the challenges of enterprises. So starting with disconnected data. Although there has been enough investment done by enterprises in their digital initiatives, yet the systems remain fragmented, which is stalling the decision-making and AI readiness for these organizations. And then comes the evolving risks. There is cyber risk, there is war, there is inflation disruption. All these risks are coming faster than what enterprises can respond to. And then comes the change management. While we may not give it as much credit as it deserves, but for any invention to become innovation, it has to be a commercial success. And the problem that I see with my clients is that oftentimes their analytics programs do not convert from pilots to full-scale implementations. And the reason I see is that their teams are not aligned or equipped to adopt the new tools and technologies. So, while there are solutions and analytics for all business issues, organizations need to overcome these barriers I just spoke about, especially from a perspective of integration of data sources and cultural mind shift. So, it was really great that Sunil asked me this question. I really look forward how the rest of the discussion entails, and I look forward to how PepsiCo is tackling some of these challenges. Thank you, Sunil.
Thanks, Manav. Thanks. You actually made some great points, Manav. So while we are on this topic, to make it more engaging and interesting for our audience, let's just launch our first poll question. I will request all our audience to choose the most appropriate response to the poll question you see on the screen. You have almost 30 seconds to respond to this poll question, and right after closing the poll, you will be able to see the results. So let me read the questions. You all should be seeing on the screen by now. What is the top challenge that you face in your supply chain operations? Option 1, inaccurate demand forecasting. Option 2, siloed data functions. Option 3, lack of real-time visibility. And option 4, limited analytics talent. All right, so I'm going to share the results. So most of the people feel that siloed data across function is the most responded one, followed by lack of real-time visibility, and followed by inaccurate demand forecasting. So now let me move on to the next section. So now, without any further ado, let me request Douglas to share his thoughts. So Douglas, what challenges in supply chain are keeping you awake at PepsiCo?
Thank you, Sunil. Hi, everyone. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Douglas Shikawa, Supply Chain Director for Pepsi Latin America in the Beverages Division. I've been working at Pepsi for the last 16 years. I started in 2008 in a concentrate plant in Brazil in quality. Then I moved to manufacturing, and I'm now in charge of supply chain and digitalization agenda for Latin America operations. I'm married with 4 kids and a dog, and I'm based in Brazil. And I want to thank you, Sigmoid, for the invitation and you all for your participation today. So first of all, I want to share with you about our operation model in Latin America. So it's important for you to understand how we are approaching, because PepsiCo is a huge company. We have different divisions. Like, I'm working in the beverages division, but we also have foods division, concentrate, and other business. In our division, the model that we work is a franchising model. So like McDonald's, Burger King, Starbucks, etc. And in this business, we work with big partners. So companies like AB InBev, HAB, CBC, Postobon, CCU. So they are very huge companies, right? In this case, we own the formula and the bottlers produces the finished goods against and following our recipe. In this case, our partners buy concentrates and transform into finished products like Pepsi, 7-Up, Gatorade, Mountain Dew, so brands that you know and you consume. The concentrate that I'm talking about is the main raw material in our business, okay? So just for you to understand, the concentrate is a kit that makes a syrup that is part of the production process that makes our ingredients, our products. In those concentrate, then we have secret ingredients, the ones that you hear stories about it. But going back to the question, PepsiCo has access to lots of data sources, and then we realized that we were not giving the right value to this treasure. So sales, consumer insights, production planning, all this data is available for us, but we were not using in a correct way. In our S&OP meetings, we were using sales forecast provided by our team with high quality in a short term, but not in a long term. And this is key. This is very key for us. So why not use the historical data to build a better signal to our demand plan? That's one key question. In our process, we need to freeze forecast for the order that we're going to share 2 months ahead. So like if we're in August, we're saying to our vendor what we're going to buy in October, right? And when we are in October, we place the order against the forecast that we shared to buy something that we're going to use and sell to the market 3 or 4 months ahead. So what we're predicting now in August, we're going to sell in the end of the year. So it's very hard to make a prediction on sales forecast in this meantime. The demand in our business changes a lot every month, and the forecast that comes from our commercial teams had huge volatility. So what's the best way to reduce the signal volatility? One of the questions that we have to respond also. Also, we are suffering from increased lead times that are impacting our working capital a lot. This requires more control and optimize inventory levels. So lead times in Latin America, I don't know if you know, but in Latin America, before COVID, it was taking about 30 to 40 days. Okay, and now it can take up to 100 days. So imagine how that impacting our cash flow, right? A lot, because you have your inventory on hand and you have 2 orders in transit. So this is a huge impact comparing to 4 or 5 years ago. So this is something that we need to solve, improving the supply chains.
Very interesting points, Douglas. I would agree with you. In fact, I could recollect hearing something very similar from many CPG business leaders when it comes to the data being available and not being able to use it. So now let me now ask a leading question from what you just said, Douglas. So from PepsiCo's lens, what accelerated the move to leverage advanced analytics for supply chain transformation at PepsiCo?
Well, at PepsiCo, the move to advanced analytics in supply chain wasn't driven by a single factor, right? We have lots of internal triggers that made it clear that we needed to evolve. And the first trigger was when we were facing limitations with legacy systems. As I said, as I was explaining about our business, our partners, they work with different systems and they work with different units of measure. So for example, in Latin America, we use hectoliters. In North America, we use 8,000 cases. So they're different units. We also have different business models, and these create more complexity to our planning process. So there are some trigger questions that I always ask. So how to harmonize the data from different systems? How we harmonize different names? So for example, Pepsi is Pepsi, right? But depending on the system that you are working, Pepsi can be Pepsi Blue, Pepsi 70 Col, or just Pepsi. And this, if it is not harmonized, it doesn't work, right? Second, there is a need for real-time forecasting. We operate in a highly competitive markets across Latin America, and it is critical to be able to anticipate demand shift, supply disruptions, or inventory bottlenecks in real time. And advanced analytics gave us the ability to move from reactive to proactive decision making. I'm going to give you some examples of things that happens here that impacts a lot in real-time forecasting. For example, climate change. So last year in Latin America, it was a very warm and hot year. This year is getting cold. So this impacts a lot, but the information is there. So we know how it's going to be the weather forecasting, right? So we can use that. The other one is political issues. In Latin America is a mess. So I don't know if you know, but in Latin America, every day we have a political issue in a different country. And this impacts a lot in our business because from one day to another day, they can change the tax political in the country, impacting the importation, the exportation. So these also impact a lot. And also economic crisis. We live in economic crisis in Latin America. Inflation here is huge. So like 2 years ago, inflation in Argentina was 200%, 300% a year. So it's a lot, right? Another key driver was a lack of cross-functional visibility. Our supply chain touches multiple teams: planning, manufacturing, logistics, commercial, and finance. And we needed a unified view that could break silos and enable collaboration. As for the pool, right? So every area has your own forecast. Finance has one forecast, commercial has another forecast, operations another forecast. How to work on that? Because different numbers means different targets, KPIs, results. Today we have more information and less time to turn into useful knowledge. That's why we needed to evolve and transform our supply chain.
Thanks, Douglas. Very insightful data points. Now, let me request Manav to chime in maybe at this point to bring out some insights on what he sees in the industry as a whole. So, Manav, how are different industries approaching analytics adoption in supply chains? And your thoughts on build versus buy decision making? This is something that we keep hearing a lot these days, right?
Thanks for asking me that question, Sunil. I think this slide is all about numbers, and numbers really get me going. So, please save if I go overboard with this slide. But let me just start by saying that manufacturing is leading the way when it comes to supply chain analytics adoption. And that's not a surprise really, because the industry has a long-standing focus on operational efficiency, and they have to maintain a demand-supply balance as well. But what's interesting is that CPG, retail, and pharma are not far too behind. Now, despite the levers or indicators that they use for their supply chain planning may differ, for example, seasonal spikes, stringent delivery compliance, or cold chill dependencies, yet all of them are finding real value in optimizing their planning as well as execution alike. Now, when you slice this with the size of organizations, until today, large businesses have been the ones driving the adoption for supply chains. Large organizations, which we typically call over $5 billion. But ISG has just noticed a remarkable change in this pattern. Just in last 12 months, smaller businesses have become the growth engine for adoption. So from 9% to 38% within a matter of a year just shows that small businesses are no longer only experimenting with analytics. They're graduating their analytics program outside of piloting into full-fledged implementations. Now, one reason I can attribute here is that generative AI tools might be making analytics more accessible, more usable, and the time to value might be lowering for them, and hence they're choosing to go with analytics, right? Now, this brings us to the biggest question that my clients keep haunting me with, if I may use, that, hey Manav, do I buy my solution or do I build one for myself? And my response typically is that, hey, off-the-shelf platforms are still relevant. If you want something that's quick to deploy, if your use case is so straightforward that out of the box it can be implemented with a platform, please go ahead. But most leaders that I'm speaking to these days are leaning towards custom solutions. And the response is very simple. Their problem is very nuanced, it's very complex, and one-size-fits-all philosophy is not working out with them. And that is being also supported by the provider landscape today. So if you see the bottom half of the slide, ISG research shows that 90% of the providers in this market, I'm talking about custom solution providers, 90% of them are already offering simulation capabilities. 80% are heavily investing in generative AI and agentic AI to build into their solutions. And 74% already offer root cause analysis as a feature within their software, within solutions. Now, all these three are very critical components when you talk about building a resilient supply chain. Now, to your question, build or buy, I don't think so. It's a matter of how much control you want on your solution. It's about analytics meeting your planning and not the other way around. So please go for something that meets your planning and strategy. Just do not buy a platform and do the reverse engineering. That's where I'm going to end this question.
Makes sense. Thanks, Manav. So, Douglas, do you want to share a quick point of view on what is PepsiCo's rationale and the lessons learned so far on the same question?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And building on what Manav said, off-the-shelf platforms can be useful for general use cases, but they often fall short when we try to use in a very complex business system. We operate across diverse markets with unique product mixes, demand behaviors, operational constraints, and a standard solution doesn't give us the flexibility or precision we need. So this project has started a few years ago with different partners. So Sigmoid was not the first partner that we worked with. And but we almost had to start from scratch with Sigmoid, exactly because it's not easy to create a system that works for our business. The solution we have built with Sigmoid brings us much more than a forecast prediction, but also is flexible enough to adapt to different business models across our 29 markets. So in summary, we couldn't find a custom solution that works and fits for our business.
Very interesting. Thanks for that, Douglas. So let me now move on to the most interesting question, or I should rather say the core of supply chain that all of us in the industry are constantly trying to solve. So Douglas, the question that I wanted to ask you, can you walk us through how PepsiCo implemented the demand forecasting solution?
Absolutely. So developing a demand forecasting tool for PepsiCo has been a very transformative journey. So first thing, we started framing the problem and highlighting our pain points to the Sigmoid team. We knew that what we had to do is a system that could provide us with sales forecasting with better forecast accuracy and a friendly tool that could speed up our planning process. The region that I work has approx 30 countries, and you can imagine that we have a lot of different planning processes, right? Since Excel files until SAP tool, for example. So how could we standardize our process across LATAM with one single tool? We have cases where the concentrate goes from Uruguay to Guatemala City and directly, And other cases where we have a DC in the middle. And in the case that we have a DC in the middle, we, as Pepsi, we buy the concentrate according to a forecast that the partner has provided. And then we sell to them 3 months later. So if the forecast that comes from the partner is not good, we're in a mess, right? And the system that we have built with Sigmoid works for all the region. This was one of the main requests that we asked them to create. So the system should be flexible and friendly enough to work for all. It's important to talk what I'm gonna say now. So we have different users with different generations. So this is key. In some cases, the users are not familiar with new tools, AI predictions. They like to use paper, Excel files, etc. It's very hard to change that. So it was very important to create something easy for them to use. So our idea in the beginning was to do and deliver everything, the planning process in 3 clicks, right? So from there, we moved into the solution design, and that's where Sigma came in as a strategic partner. So together, we co-developed a platform called FAST, which stands for Forecast Accuracy Simulation Tool. And the goal was to build a system that could generate automated, algorithm-driven sales forecasts and then translate this into a demand signal for concentrate purchases, while also managing inventory balances, generating custom KPIs. So the first step is generate a sellout forecast. But to generate a sellout forecast, we needed 18 months sales forecast. And these 18 months with a good forecasting accuracy. Then, after we have a sellout forecast, this was translated to the consumption plan. And then we could simulate what is the best purchase order and the best forecast to freeze based on our DII target, days in inventory targets, and also forecast accuracy target. So I'm going to show you one example of the steps that we follow to create that. So the first thing is the system creates automatically the sellout forecast for the next 18 months. Based on this forecast, we can agree with that forecast and create a simulation for concentrate purchasing, or we can build on that. So for example, if the historical data is giving us a number for the next 18 months forecast, but we know that there is a campaign that is going to give us, 2% elasticity in the following 6 months. We can add that to the sellout forecast and then use this forecast to create our concentrate forecast. One of the key learnings was the importance of cross-functional collaboration. Forecast isn't just a supply chain task. It involves commercial, finance, and procurement. And this is important because imagine that you create your production planning, supply planning, demand planning, and you have your order and forecast ready. But if finance or commercial disagree with that forecast, you cannot use it, right? So that's why when we started creating the system, we asked Sigmoid to build a system that could be useful not only for supply chain teams, but also for the commercial and finance teams. Another learning was around change management. So moving from manual to automated forecasting required a mindset shift. So it's necessary to invest in training, communication, to build trust in the models and show how they could enhance, not replace, human judgment. I'm going to share with you one example of what happened in Mexico when we started using the system there. So the first sellout forecast that the system generated, we shared that with the sales team. They saw the numbers and they said, the first thing that they said was, the system doesn't work. I don't use it. I don't want to use it. And I said, why? Why not? And then they said, no, because the forecast that you're giving me is going to achieve in the end of the year less of what we have sold last year. And we said, okay, but let's see what the history is giving us. So the history is saying that from January to March, we're selling less than last year. So the algorithm, the system is giving us that signal. If you want to use this, add more campaigns or etc., of course, the system is not going to see that. in that way, But this is something that we need to work to build trust between the team, right? Because it's not gonna be easy for them to accept that. So change is not easy. It's in any part of our life, it's not easy. But as Churchill said, or you take a change by your hands or through your throat. So it's our option, right? So today Fast is helping us making faster, more informed decisions, reduce waste, and improve service levels. And we're continuing to evolving. So it's not build and use. No, we're evolving the tool, adding new data sources, refining algorithms, and expanding the scope also.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Douglas. In fact, change management is not easy. So what you said is very important. I think all the transformation programs that we have seen starts with change management and ends with change management. That's the foundation of the change. So now let's move on to the next section of the webinar where we touch upon AI as an enabler for supply chain. So I'm going to launch the next poll question. We have about 30 seconds, same like the first one. So let's just bring it down. The next poll question is, what role is AI playing in your supply chain transformation? Option 1, exploring AI use cases but not yet implemented. Option 2, piloting AI solutions in select supply chain areas. Option 3, actively using AI across multiple supply chain functions. And option 4, not using AI currently. These are precisely most of the options that we see across most of the CPG customers these days. So I'm still waiting for people to respond to this. Let's just give it a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. Looks like AI is being in the pilot phase for most of the people who have responded to piloting AI solutions in select supply chain areas, followed by exploring AI use cases. That means we have large set of the customers who are still exploring what AI use cases can actually unlock the potential of supply chain transformation. So with this, now let's go back to Douglas to learn a little bit more about the S&OP transformation at PepsiCo. We discussed in the previous section. So Douglas, what value has PepsiCo seen from this transformation so far?
Right, so digital pillar is one of the main priorities for PepsiCo International Beverages, and we have seen significant value on this journey. So the main value is to move from a very manual process to a digital platform that helps the user to improve supply planning in a safer place. This is important because when you're going from something manual, the Excel files, let's say that I work with the Excel files for the past 30 years, and I'm moving to a tool, AI tool, etc. So you need to give to the user a safer place, saying, look, don't worry, this place has lots of warnings, triggers, controls, traceability. So it's very important to do that. The system has a great traceability with workflows designed to a number of different business logical. And as I said before, depending on the country, you have a different role and responsibility, and the system guarantees that. Also, today we have a huge dependency of our people experience, and we had to move to a tool that will leverage the knowledge, but in a way that will not depend 100% from people. In our case, particular case, we depend a lot on our people experience, and we shouldn't, because the generation is changing. That the cycle of the new generation is short. So you're not going to have a planner that's going to stay with you for 10 years, 15 years, 30 years. This is not going to happen. It can happen now because the generation that is still working, it is, but we're going to change that, And I can also split in 2 points of view. The first one is the quantitative side. So the main target is to improve forecast accuracy, right? Is one of the main targets that we have for this project, especially for 12 and 16 weeks. This is going to translate into a better service level and lower working capital requirement. Also, inventory optimization in the whole chain. I'm going to give you one example that happens in PepsiCo in our business. So our product have a very specific raw material. So it's really important to control the raw material inventories to avoid write-off. So imagine that the flavor that we use for 7-Up only works for us. The vendor cannot sell the raw materials to another client, consumer, so it doesn't work. So the commitment we have with our suppliers is to buy what we have forecasted. If we don't buy it, we pay, right? So from a planning agility perspective, there are some markets that we need to run several number of planning simulations, and the tool provides agility that can run simulations in less than 3 minutes. This was one of the main asks that we have give to Sigmoid. When you complete your planning process and you deliver the numbers to finance, what they usually say, no, do it again. Change the forecast, increasing sales, dropping sales, buy less, increase DII, reduce DII. So if you have a system that is friendly and agile, you cannot do it. You stay your whole month doing this. So in this case, we can do the simulations in less than 3 minutes. On the qualitative side, the biggest shift was the mindset and collaboration. The teams across supply chain, commercial, and finance can work from a single source of truth, so which improves alignment and trust in the numbers. So the idea in the end is that we don't use different sources of forecasting, only fast. When each area has their own numbers, usually they have different numbers, we started from a mess. So in short, this transformation is helping us build a more resilient, responsive, and data-driven supply chain. And we're just getting started.
Thanks again, Douglas. Now let's just go back to Manav again to get his perspectives on how AI and Gen AI trend he sees in the industry is changing the way supply chain operates. So Manav, how can business build resilient supply chains with Gen AI?
So the generative AI, I think we're all gonna agree that it's the theme of the season, and one that's top of the mind for supply chain leaders today. See, the way I see resilience today is that it's not about creating buffers against disruptions. It's about anticipating them, preventing them, and if they occur, mitigate them. And that's where generative AI is coming in. It's not just a chatbot-based assistant, really. It's a decision augmentation engine that's going to evolve with your context and data, right? And ISG is already seeing that generative AI is fetching some early value in a few use cases. For example, supply chain planners can sense demand changes earlier. They can adjust forecasts quickly. And generative AI is even able to suggest them actions in the events of stockouts or supplier delays. Now you have to take into account that these co-pilots are not generic. They are built specifically for supply chain roles. And so they know the language of lead times, safety stock, and service levels. From a KPI lens, if you look at, what's changing is the time to decision. Now, generative AI is cutting down time that was being spent in the planning side of the world by the planners. We are already looking at cost optimization across multiple areas of supply chain. The stockout events are going lower. On-time fulfillment are at higher levels than before, right? So this is all happening because generative AI is able to add value. But here's the nuance. These generative AI models are only as good as the context that they understand. So what I'm telling my enterprise clients is that you need to not just build powerful large language models, you need to train them on domain knowledge and as well as give them access to real-time supply chain signals. And that's going to fetch the most value out of your generative AI programs. Now, to build that kind of generative AI-driven resilience at scale, the enterprises need much more than standalone AI models. They need a future-proof architecture. Now, this slide over here is something that I'm using with my clients as a reference model for them to build an architecture with multiple building blocks, a lot of moving pieces that is going to learn and evolve with them over time. And there are some important aspects to it that I want to highlight here today. I will start with vertical agents, vertical AI agents. Now, these are smart co-pilots built for specific supply chain areas. They just don't give you data, they understand the why behind a event or a forecast that it's making. Now, with this comes the explainable AI. Let's just say it's just a fancy way of saying that users need to be convinced about what AI is recommending them. Why should they trust AI? How is AI reaching that point of decision making? It should not be a black box for the users. The next thing I want to highlight here is the data fabric. And in my opinion, as an analyst, that holds the key for any analytical program to be successful. As I said, AI is not a one-day solution or a white solution or a point solution for you. It's a journey that an enterprise will embark on. So the data needs to be put in constantly from your current landscape as well as your future technology landscape as well. So creating a mechanism so that the data keeps flowing today and tomorrow to the system for it to learn and evolve. Now, I'm also seeing a lot of interest in the command centers. Now, command centers combined with agentic AI is actually fetching us a lot of value. It is going beyond than just the visibility dashboards and simulation capabilities. Rather, it is adding a layer of prescriptive analytics and even automating decisions for enterprises. It has got integrations with upstream and downstream systems, and so it can trigger the actions that enterprises want to take in an autonomous way. And I would, bring up as last couple of technologies would be edge AI and down the lane quantum computing, which will enable enterprises to solve problems at source in the field and in a much faster way when quantum computing becomes of experimentative stage and more commercially available. So in simple terms, building a resilient supply chain is not about using just one tool or one technology. It's about creating an ecosystem, the one that helps you sense, respond, and learn over time. Thank you.
Thanks, Manav. Thanks. So, Douglas, any closing advice for leaders looking to future-proof their supply chains? Like a quick one, just, we are just left with a few minutes, so if you can do it quickly.
Yeah, if there's one piece of advice I would emphasize, it's start with clarity, but build with agility. So first, get really clear about where your supply chain needs help. Is it forecasting, inventory swings, etc.? And then don't wait for everything to be perfect. Pilot new ideas quickly, see what works, and scale those wins. At PepsiCo, for example, we started fast just to improve demand forecasting, but it's growing into a much better planning platform over time. And if you want to start and expect to have an iPhone 16, don't do it. Don't even start a project because the frustration will come earlier, as you can imagine. And don't forget the human side, because technology is powerful, but make tools user-friendly, invest in change management, and make a point to celebrate those small successes to keep everyone engaged. So this is really important. And also choose partners who truly get your business. So for us, working with Sigmoid made a difference. They didn't just bring technical skills, but they worked alongside us to co-create solutions that fit our unique challenges. So just to conclude, Walter Deming, the father of modern quality management, said, "In God we trust, all others must bring data." So that's it, Sunil. Thank you.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much, Douglas. So up next, just a quick look at some of the key tools we have built at Sigmoid. So we have built a set of tools to make supply chain transformations faster and more practical for our clients. So first one that you see here is Demand IQ. Demand IQ helps forecast demand better and manage inventory smarter. Next one that you see here is Supply IQ that brings everything together to streamline the end-to-end supply chain operations. And then taking this one step further is Network IQ that gives real-time visibility into logistics, supply chain network, so that issues can be addressed quickly. And finally, Procurement IQ that helps simplify and automate buying decision to save cost and stay compliant. So these tools are designed to boost agility, reduce waste, and make real difference on the ground by integrating with any existing enterprise application stack you might have or any ERP you might be using. So with this, we'll move on to the last part of the webinar Q&A. I was just looking at it. We are at time, but I just pick one of the questions. The rest all of the questions I think we are going to look at and respond back to the attendees directly. So I'll just read one question. How close are you with real-time tracking on demand, logistics, and supply? So maybe Douglas, if I can ask you that question, this is from one of the attendees. How close are you with the real-time tracking on demand, logistics, and supply?
Sure. Yeah. So there are some markets that we are improving a lot the systems that we are using to sell our product. So when we are, for example, in Brazil, there is a platform called Bees where we connect AB InBev with the client. So from this system we get sales on a daily basis. So once we connect that information with the demand planning information system, then we can build a more robust system. So depending of the country, the system changes. As I said in the beginning, the main challenge we have is because we have different systems across Latin America. But this is the direction that we're going.
Great. Thank you, Douglas. So with that, I think it takes us to the end of the session. So thank you once again to Douglas, Manav, and all our attendees for being part of today's session. It's inspiring to see how AI and advanced analytics are shaping supply chains, moving from reactive to proactive to intelligent and real-time decision making. So we hope you found the discussion valuable and relevant. So before you leave, do take a moment to share your feedback, as it helps us to fine-tune the future sessions and continue delivering content that matters to you. You all have a good rest part of your day. Thank you. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.